My, oh my, it is Monday on the beat, and it is one of the best Mondays of the year because, Birm, on Thursday, Ohio State returns to the practice field, so training camp is finally here, and I just couldn't be more excited. This is the best way to start a Monday.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think it's a week we've been looking forward to for a while now. There's been obviously a ton of off-season discussion, a lot of filibustering to get here. I think the idea that we're going to get
us?
Well, by everyone, we get to go into Thursday. We get to watch 3 days of acclimation practices and see the guys that we haven't seen in a few months. And it's a good opportunity for fans to get out there and connect with the program a little bit. When we were in Las Vegas last week, Ross Bjork said that there were still some tickets available for those first 3 open practices. So get out there. It's going to be a big party. I think people should get out and enjoy it. Weather looks like it will be nice at the end of the week. So why not?
Oh, you've already checked the forecast, have you?
Well, doy.
Oh, I guess I should have known. Some things never change on the Austin and Birm show. And really excited for everything that we can continue to bring at 10TV, 10TV Plus, 97.1 The Fan, and across all audio and podcast platforms. It's going to be a super fun season. I think we got to do a little bit of a taste of that, get some of the rust off with the notebook at the Cardell Jones Softball Classic, then went out to Las Vegas, and that was now 6 days ago. Already feels like it might as well have been a month ago, but because of the quirks of the way that we went out and covered the event, Birm, and had Wednesday with the interviews with Jeremiah Smith, Caleb Downs, and Sonny Styles, 3 Thoughts Thursday with myself and Adam King, and then the Ross Bjork interview on Friday on the beat. I haven't really got to catch up with you about what we heard on Tuesday since Snap Judgment. So upon further review, what was the first thing that really stood out to you about the Buckeyes out there in Las Vegas?
I don't know that it's the first thing, but I do think that I've had a lot of trouble forgetting or glossing over the praise that was shifted at Kenyatta Jackson. That has been, again, it's not to suggest that we thought Kenyatta would not be a impactful player or anything like that for Ohio State this year, because I think as Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry go, so goes this Ohio State defense, in my opinion. But the tenor of the conversation around Kenyatta was so contrastly different than anything we've heard in the last 3 years about him. And I don't know if that's his fault or our fault or just the nature of the beast when you're playing behind Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau, that maybe any previous conversation about him had always been tempered a little bit or brushed off because it's like, he's still not going to play that much. But now, like, it's his year, it's his defensive line. Talking to Sonny Styles and hearing Sonny basically say that he's become the leader of that defensive line room. It seems pretty important. And again, I think for Ohio State to have a successful season by Ohio State standards, which means get into the playoffs, I think Kenyatta Jackson has to be an absolute star this season. So I'm excited to hear that conversation is out there, but I will admit to being a little bit surprised by it based on the relative easygoing nature of conversation around him in the last 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, Kenyatta Jackson did not have to be in a leadership role for 3 years. And, with Jack and JT, not just those two, but Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton, it's like they were pretty well stocked when it came to that front. So the Ohio State defensive line didn't need him to do that. Even when it came to production, yeah, I mean, of course, it would have been nice if Kenyatta Jackson had made that leap to superstardom already. But again, they were in a situation where Ohio State didn't have to view that as an absolute necessity for them to survive and build the best defense in the country and win a national championship. So I think if it was coming to the latter part, which is Kenyatta Jackson, is he going to be a starter you can rely on to potentially lead Ohio State in sacks? And can he do all the things that Larry Johnson teaches defensive ends? And is he going to play the vast majority of the snaps out there? I would have been like, yeah, that is my expectation. It's the other part. I'm not going to retroactively pretend like I thought that anyone would bring up his name for the Block O as a candidate last Tuesday. So if the leadership piece, if somebody does have to take that step, and someone who's been in the program as long as Kenyatta Jackson or Caden Curry, I mean, they both know what it's going to take, and they spent all that time also learning, not just from Larry Johnson, but Jack and JT, how to handle their business and what it takes to set an example in the weight room or on the practice field. So, maybe there's a world where we should have seen it coming or projected that it might happen, but it's really more about that leadership part that's so important, because there has to be new leaders on this team. And if Kenyatta Jackson is one, and you get the production that we've thought was probably going to come along, that's a huge deal.
Yeah, I mean that is the thing about Ohio State is that you can go to year, and you're not generally going to find a huge drop off in talent. And maybe there will be this year because you just lost 14 NFL draft picks, but where the vacuum really comes, what needs to be filled is the leadership. And so to hear that Kenyatta Jackson has been one of those guys that stepped up that way has been really refreshing. We figured guys like Austin Saraveld and Brandon Ennis and other players like that Ryan Day mentioned last week would be brought up. Those are guys we've seen it, when we've seen the dudes of the week and all that stuff, but we had not seen Kenyatta Jackson in those conversations. And so to hear that last week was really, really important.
All right. So Kenyatta Jackson was front of mind for you. What else? I know that you were particularly enamored last week with the Ryan Day play calling Brian Hartline situation.
Yeah, but I think it's more about, as I've tried to separate from that a little bit, it's about this continued evolution of Ryan Day as a head coach, and the lessons that maybe he learned from Nick Saban this offseason, I think are important. The conversations they had on the golf course, both in Columbus and elsewhere, I think is valuable for Ohio State in a way that maybe we haven't thought about. I was just really pleasantly relieved that the Ryan Day we've seen all offseason reappeared in Las Vegas, and it wasn't like a show, or he didn't try to put on airs and act too stoic or anything like that. He just seemed very, very comfortable where he's at right now. And I guess that's what happens when you win a national championship. But the conversations with Nick Saban and about the way Nick Saban used to hire his coordinators, I think is really insightful for the future of Ohio State football, because I don't anticipate, whatever happens with Matt Patricia in year one, the fact that Chip Kelly was there for 1 year and moved on, I think is certainly not ideal, but I think it's something that we might need to get our heads around a little bit when it comes to the types of coaches that Ohio State is going to continue to hire for their coordinator type jobs, because Ryan Day's insistence on being very deliberate, very intensive in his search, both with Matt Patricia this year and Chip Kelly last year, and even the Brian Hartline thing, which maybe feels like a little bit of a gimme at times. Like, I don't think it was. And I think that, we fully expect Brian Hartline to be at Ohio State for a couple more years, but I think it's telling about the future of what Ryan Day wants, and understanding now that it's the Ohio State offense and the Ohio State defense, and the people that come into it have to fit into those molds, not the other way around.
Are you surprised at all that Nick Saban, I guess maybe once you win a national championship, you're allowed to go hang out in the Nick Saban club, where championship corner, and you can talk shop. You've earned the opportunity to be there. But that Nick Saban is talking in depth with Ryan Day, or B, that Ryan Day is trusting enough
Seeking it out.
to go have those discussions with someone that, he was once competing against for national championships, and then losing thanks to the magical healing powers of one program and the inability to avoid testing on the other.
Of Lake Minnetonka?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I don't know Nick Saban as someone to be very generous outside of that circle. Now, he's hired a bunch of coaches, and as you mentioned, his track record of doing that and making sure that they fit within what Nick Saban wanted at the top is sort of what we talked about with Ryan Day adjusting his own program for, this is the Ohio State offense, this is the Ohio State defense, this is the Ohio State program, which is a coded way for him to now say, this is the Ryan Day offense, the Ryan Day defense, and the Ryan Day program, knowing that he doesn't usurp the block O, but it is aligned in the way that he wants it. But Ryan Day also doesn't generally like to go outside of his circle. One of the things that we talked about on a Freaky Friday, the mailbag edition, was like, your question for him was like, how would he continue to trust other people? And would he, in the wake of winning a national championship? I think Nick Saban is probably an example of that. I don't know anyone who would turn down advice from Nick Saban, but I also wouldn't know historically Ryan Day to seek it out.
Yeah, I mean, well, the truth is we don't know if Ryan Day sought it out or if it was Nick Saban who reached out once Ryan Day entered the national championship head coach club. And so I think it's just as likely that it was Nick Saban reaching out as it was Ryan Day reaching out. Sure. But it doesn't really matter. The point is that there are very few people who can understand what it takes to get to that level and to achieve what those guys have achieved. And so now you do fit into that club. You do fit into the, hey, we're peers now. It's no longer Ryan Day, second year head coach getting waxed by Alabama in 2020 in the national championship game with 51 players or whatever. Like he's proven that he can lead a program, and he's leading Ohio State, a program that Nick Saban was once an assistant coach, with. Nick Saban, I think, probably holds an affinity for all the places like Ohio State and Alabama and the longtime historical Blue Bloods. And so very few people can understand what that job is like. And so I would imagine Ryan Day is trying to now get to the point of, how do I build something that is as lasting as what Nick Saban had? And if there's only one way to really get that answer, and I think it's by talking to Nick Saban, because nobody else in college football has built what Nick Saban has built in the last 50 years.
Yeah, that's true. Did you think that Ryan Day got more or less questions about national landscape, NIL rules, college football playoff expansion, scheduling than you anticipated?
It was less for me. I thought it would have been a much more common part of the conversation, but I really did felt, and I know that there's been pushback over at Letterman Row and on the On3 message boards where we both, put our written work, that people still seem very put off by the way Ross Bjork and Ryan Day both have addressed this in the last few days. And I'm just not sure what else they could say. I mean, it's been beaten to a drum, and we saw obviously the executive order coming down. What was that, Thursday, from President Trump, which essentially was nothing different than what is already in existence. It just seems like a lot of people are bluster and a lot of people are posturing. But as Ross Bjork told us, until these rules are actually codified, until the rules are written, everyone's just kind of on edge and waiting for the other shoe to drop. And so I think Ryan Day and Ross Bjork both handled it well. I know that there are things that they probably wish they could say, but just can't or won't because of decorum rules and not wanting to come across as too whiny or complainy. But I think it was pretty much what I expected. There were certainly questions about the specifics of which deals have been declined and how much is that, I appreciate people asking it. I think they have to know, if you ask that question, you're not going to get an answer.
Yeah, they're not. I thought the most relevant, interesting, underlined, italicized quote of the entire Ryan Day press conference was, at least when it comes to this specifically, the NIL topic and house settlement, and if Ohio State is falling behind in recruiting, was Ryan Day saying pretty explicitly that Ohio State will not be offering money to players that it cannot guarantee that it will pay, because, quote, that would be a bad look for Ohio State. Clearly, there are other programs that are not worried about that bad look in the short term. But this is, again, the exact same conversation that we had about Texas A&M or Miami or Michigan State 4 and 5 years ago. They were willing to take those short-term shortcuts and then weren't able to pay that money, and then they immediately lost all of those, the vast majority of those players to the portal.
And if you can correct me if I'm wrong, but just those three schools alone, Texas, A&M, Michigan State, and Miami, when this all really came to fruition in 2021, 2022, all three of those schools have changed head coaches in the last 4 years. And the schools that are being the most aggressive, taking those shortcuts now, are coaches that are on the proverbial hot seat or programs that are attempting to, at least in my opinion, mitigate some potential scholarship reductions or whatever by making sure they have higher grade players to get through the next 2 years of maybe no postseason or losing scholarships. But that's just hypothetical on my part. But I mean, I think it is worth pointing out that those programs that were taking those short-term effects or short-term shortcuts, the conversation at the time was, well, they're desperate. They have to. And all of those programs ended up falling on their face. So now here we are. Ohio State still has not fallen on its face. And again, that doesn't mean that there's not things that can be adjusted. And it doesn't mean that Ohio State and its coaches don't wish that they were handling things a little bit different, because I feel strongly that they do. But, you know, what Ross Bjork told us on the beat on Friday was that they'll pivot if they have to. And they're going to have to. Like that's going to happen at some point, because the reality of this matter seems pretty clear. And that is that anytime a rule gets put in place, there's going to be a line of people trying to break it and or circumvent it or invalidate it. So Ohio State, with now 4 months to signing day, like they're in a position where they feel like we need to pivot. And I had conversations with a number of people in the last 5 days. And the one thing I kept hearing, and I know it'll sound vague because it is vague, was we have a plan. We have a plan and we will be fine. Does that make people feel better today? Probably not, but it's also not really worth getting that worked up about when, as you said, here we are 3 days away from the first day of fall practice.
Yeah, I can't wait. What's one thing that we're going to have, obviously, a couple days build up here. We'll have a Talking Tuesday with Adam King, and then a modified sort of stock watch, and then to help get preview going for Thursday morning on the beat with Birm. But like, what's the thing that, taking the quarterbacks out of it, that given some of the conversations we had in Las Vegas and being around the program, or at least a few of the Buckeyes and support staff, Ryan Day, Ross Bjork, is there anything that you're like, maybe now that's the first thing I'm going to look at on Thursday morning?
No, but it's not. I don't want to take the quarterbacks out of it because they're a piece of it. But what it was hearing Ryan Day talk about the way quarterbacks are judged based, and yet comparing that to how little football they actually play. I thought it's something he's talked about before, but I think it's worth reiterating. His stance on quarterback development and what actually, when a quarterback is actually ready, because these guys are playing 10 games a year, or in some cases like Julian Sayin and Lincoln Kienholz, for example, who haven't played a real game in multiple years, and now they're just expected to lead Ohio State. Like, I do think it is an interesting way to look at that challenge. But it was also echoed a touch when it came to the conversation about the running backs, which we've had a lot of positive buzz about with James Peoples. And then I'm sure people that are watching this show saw the photo of James Peoples on Friday from his X account, where he looked like superhuman. But it is worth.
Remember a month ago when he was like, "No, I don't know, Birm, Austin, what are you guys talking about? I'm 211 pounds. Like, you look like a grown man."
He looks like two grown men. The dude looks monstrous. As I tweeted on Friday, James is looking like two peoples. Like, he's huge. But the point is, neither James Peoples nor CJ Donaldson nor Bo Jackson, Bo a little bit this spring, there wasn't a lot of contact for those guys. And so I think that it's worth thinking about as we head into the season opener against perhaps the most physical defense Ohio State's going to face all year long. Like, that is going to be a really interesting matchup with Texas. And you start to think about all of the little pieces of the Ohio State program that are being counted on that have had no requisite experience at all when it comes to playing against a team like that. And I know Texas is in the same boat, but we cover Ohio State, so I'm going to think about it from the Buckeyes perspective. When you are playing a quarterback that hasn't played a game, when you're playing running backs that haven't played in that sort of environment, obviously CJ Donaldson has played against Texas in the past, so maybe he's got a little bit different perspective. But it's interesting to me how this is shaping up, and how much pressure is going to be put on those two positions that are traditionally, or at least in the Ohio State Ryan Day era, like you look at it and you go, those have been pretty good. But now you have to start from scratch. And I thought Ryan Day's philosophy / perspective on that was interesting.
Yeah, I also didn't think that we were going to be getting, I don't know, multiple people talking about matchup games before training camp even started. So pretty good indication that the leadership group and the veterans are buying in, continuing to buy in, I should say, to what Ryan Day is selling, the way he's approaching it. Shouldn't be a mystery to anybody. Ryan Day's had a countdown going to the Texas game in the season opener since January 21st. So, but I thought we might get into the middle of August before anybody started using that terminology. And instead, everyone's just as excited as we are to get into training camp and then move into the late August in that season opener. That's awesome.
And then you saw Ethan Anianwa and the dudes of the week. Like there's some things. I mean, there's other things that were discussed last week that I think we could dive into. Like last year, for example, the conversation heading into the season around the offensive line was very similar to, in my perspective, as the way we're viewing the defensive line this year. Obviously, the offensive line turned out pretty well. When you start to hear the conversation last week about Kenyatta Jackson, about Will Smith, like, does it start to feel like last year's preseason buildup? Like hey, people are like, hey, Austin Serveld's pretty good. Don't sleep on this guy. Or, like it seems like there's maybe reason to be slightly more confident than there was in the past about the defensive line play, which obviously goes back to what we talked about at the start of the show with Kenyatta Jackson, but it's more than just that.
Yeah. Reading too much into things, which is what I'm known to do, what I love to do.
So it's the job.
Will Smith Jr.'s name coming up as frequently as it did, and in two cases, first, when people were talking about the defensive tackle, yeah, I think you're right. Because if somebody had said to us on July 28th of 2024, hey, Austin Serveld might be a critical piece for Ohio State this year in winning the national championship, I would have said something must have gone very wrong. And guess what? Some things did go very wrong, but also that conversation was accurate about both Austin Serveld and Carson Hinsman. And now look at that situation. So that's not to say that it's absolutely going to happen that way for Will Smith or even Kenyatta Jackson at the top. We'll see. Like, that's the part where they have a month starting on Thursday to get ready for one of the highest profile games of the season. And we're going to find out pretty quickly how ready or not those guys are. They don't have to be a totally finished product by then, because there's 11 more regular season games after that. And more likely than not, postseason appearances for Ohio State beyond that. So, and even you're talking about the first week of camp when Austin Serveld has to go out and play left tackle. He still wasn't ready to start for Ohio State in September of last year, but he was by the end. So, I guess that's another reminder, if that's for me or for you or for anybody watching on the beat. It's like, even if somebody doesn't win a job by the middle of August, and if we spent some of the last 6 months talking about some of these people and it doesn't happen immediately, doesn't mean that it won't. But it's going to be great, I think, to track some of this progress. And if that storyline develops the same way on the defensive line, which the potential is out there, well, that's going to be one of the stories of the season for Ohio State.
Yeah, it is. We could talk about a lot of things. I want to talk about this, and it's pretty important. July 28th is National Milk Chocolate Day. It's also, and this is the one that really got me. So I just feel like I want to find a way to connect with people about what's going on in their world. It's been pretty hot and humid in the Midwest, as everyone knows.
Monday is beautiful also in northern Michigan this week. Oh boy.
Treetops is a nice area. July 28th is also National Water Park Day. Okay. Now here's the problem I have with that, Austin.
Yeah, because water parks
National Water Park Day was dubbed that in 2017. Okay, so it's only 8 years into its existence.
Mm-hmm.
But it was founded in 2017 by Kalahari Resorts and Conventions. So they got to buy a day for their own product nationally, and then expect people in our position who are talking to America on these days to go out and hold up the flag for them? No, I disagree. Unless Kalahari wants to send me some sort of invitation to their water park and potentially a nice week away.
I
can't just sit here and applaud this. I think it's important that we call this stuff out.
You have a bunch of free time coming up that you want a week's trip to a Kalahari water park?
I mean, I don't know. We haven't seen the schedule yet as far as what we're going to be doing.
Okay.
I think we're going to get a couple days, obviously, here at the end of this week where we have to be in Columbus, but I might get a couple days off without having to be back there. I don't know.
Okay. Well,
Gary, are you paying attention? We could use that. We could use that calendar, bud.
Yeah.
It's also Buffalo Soldiers Day as another. So
how many national holiday? I mean, who's designating these days?
I don't know. That one doesn't say who promoted it, but National Milk Chocolate Day, Buffalo Soldiers Day, and National Water Park Day. But of those three, the one I'm most offended by is National Water Park Day, because I just simply can't believe that they let a water park buy a day.
Well, do they buy it? I don't even know how that works.
I mean, I assume they had to buy it or bought it, because how else would it say? It's presented. It's founded in 2017 by National Day Calendar and Kalahari Resorts. So National Day Calendar must sell out specific days for specific causes, which just seems, I don't know. I mean, it seems really false and disingenuous and hurtful.
Well, Hallmark did that with Valentine's Day, didn't they?
I
just made that up. Sorry.
No, I mean, you're probably right. I think that we should also never celebrate Valentine's Day. I mean,
okay. Well, I'll let you sort that out at home, and I won't worry about that here, because we'll definitely keep celebrating, because I like keeping my wife happy and give my daughter Valentine's gifts too.
Yeah, but are they going to celebrate National Water Park Day?
Well, no, because they know that I strongly dislike water parks, because I don't have the complexion for it, and I don't like being crammed into one pool with a mass of humanity. It's the
I'm just
worst.
not sure at what age do we get to that marker in our life where it's like, I don't want to swim with other people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I've been there for a while.
I think that there comes a point where it's like, you will swim with your immediate family, and that's it. And if you're swimming with others, it becomes a much different experience, and one that loses all control to enjoy yourself. And so I think, as a society, we really should probably just have some sort of rule that says we all get pools on our own.
Well, you can work on that.
Pool rules.
Took a wild turn here at the end, but you can tell we're in a great mood, because it is the week of training camp, and the beat is fired up to cover it, and maybe talk some nonsense occasionally too. That's prone to happen here on 10 TV, 10 TV Plus, 97.1 The Fan, and of course, anywhere that you download podcasts on your feed. Austin Birm Show rolling into training camp starting on Thursday. This, though, it's a Monday. It's an oh my goodness Monday. Have a great day, and let's have a great week. He's Birm. I'm Austin. Talk to you tomorrow.